Future Mill threw my ring down the drain, attacked me, and got arrested. Fiancé begs me not to press charges. Hello, I'm Sarah. Let me tell you about the first time I met my boyfriend Mike's mother. It was terrible. She was quite nasty to me, making fun of my weight despite the fact that I am perfectly healthy. She spoke such terrible words that I burst into tears. I couldn't stay, so I left Mike's place immediately. I did not want to be around someone who treated me like that. But Mike stayed behind to chat to his mother. Later, he texted me to apologize for her behavior and to tell me what happened after I left. Mike was really angry with his mother. He reprimanded her for being so nasty to me. He described her as a stuck-up, egotistical, and arrogant woman. He claimed she was attempting to ruin our relationship because she couldn't abide another woman attracting his attention. He warned her that she had one final chance to mend her ways before he cut her out of his life. After hearing this, I felt slightly better. Mike made it obvious that he would not let his mother mistreat me again. I chose to give our relationship another try since I loved Mike and trusted him to shield me from his mother's nastiness. 2 weeks later, he invited me to a family birthday party and introduced me to his mother for the second time. This time I'd be meeting his sisters and grandparents. His grandparents and sisters are wonderful folks. They asked basic inquiries about my employment, family, and friends. His mother seemed to shun me throughout the evening, and I was fine with it. I went to get something from my handbag and realized it wasn't where I left it. I looked everywhere and couldn't find it. I went to ask my boyfriend, and he started helping me look. He then got a funny expression on his face and hurriedly went upstairs. I then overheard a lot of yelling. Start upstairs. After a few minutes, he came back down with my purse and informed me that we would be going once we were in the car. I asked him what was going on. His mother had taken my purse so she could see my driver's license. She intended to perform a background check on me. He informed me she had told him this before, but he had assumed she was joking. I decided it was best if I avoided any of his family activities for the time being, and this worked out well for a while, since he attended any of his family parties alone. He would ask me before leaving if I was certain I didn't want to go, but I always said no. At this point, I noticed that my boyfriend's words to his mother about not allowing her to disrespect me again did not match his behavior. I kept this concept in mind and began to pay attention when his family held a reunion last week and he invited me to join them. I was hesitant, but given the large crowd, I didn't expect her to pull anything when we arrived. Everything was going well. I met his extended family and caught up with his sisters. His mother appeared to be shooting me. I had death glares all night, but I ignored them. She soon approached and joined me at a table with his sisters and a few cousins. The chat was pleasant. His sister has an 18-year-old cousin, the same age as my niece. I actually showed his sister a photo of my niece from my phone. His mother looked at the TV and began laughing. She informed me that if she and her son have children, she hopes they do not look like my niece. This was my breaking point, and I erupted like a volcano. I began to shout at her, telling her that she was the most horrible person I had ever had the unfortunate opportunity to meet. I informed her that if I ever had children with her son, she could be sure she'd never meet them since hell is too far away. I'm not sure precisely what I said, but his younger sister subsequently described it as epic. She began to play the victim, complaining that I had misread her joke. My partner rushed over at this point, and she threw herself into his arms, telling him that she was a nasty woman who needed to be thrown out right now. He informed her that this was not going to happen, and that she should quit making a fool of herself. She seems to accept this for a moment before sitting back down. She kept sobbing that I didn't know how to accept a joke. Then something in her snapped when she saw what my partner was holding in his hand and proceeded to have another tantrum. I had no idea what was going on and just stood there, watching this adult woman throw a tantrum like a kid. None of what she said made sense to me because it was basically senseless yelling. However, I did notice a lot of negative remarks directed at me. My partner then told me we were leaving and urged me to get my belongings as I began to prepare. My future mother-in-law lunged for my boyfriend's hand, grabbing the small box he was holding. She then looked me in the eyes and stated, I ran outside and threw the box down a storm drain. It turned out that my boyfriend planned to propose to me. He'd just gotten his grandmother's ring while we were at the reunion. His grandma is sad since her ring is now down a storm drain instead of being in the family as she had always wished. I'm not sure where to proceed from here. Update. Unfortunately, the engagement ring could not be located. The city came out to help, but they were unable to find anything. My fiancé and his family were heartbroken by this. Many of them have abandoned communication with your mother-in-law. As a result, the ring held greater significance in the family than I knew. This was the final straw for many of the family members. His sisters have opted to maintain communication with his prospective mother-in-law, and one of them told me that she is playing the victim card, claiming she suffered a mental breakdown, and that we should all be more compassionate and understanding of her. I call this utter nonsense, and I know she understood exactly what she was doing when she put the ring down the storm drain. I suspect the ring never went down the drain in the first place. I suspect she hid the ring somewhere on herself and tossed the package down the toilet. I have no way of proving this, but I have stated my concerns to my fiancé and his family. It's a vast mansion, though, and could be hidden anywhere. I do not believe the ring will be located anytime soon. On a positive side, I am now engaged to my fiancé. My engagement ring lacks the sentimental value of the former ring, but I still adore my new ring. I'm overjoyed to be engaged, and I can't wait to spend my life with my fiancé. My fiancé has little communication with his mother right now, but she has learnt that we are engaged. When she discovered out, she reportedly refused to leave her room for 3 days. She refused to talk to anyone or eat anything. The drama around this woman is astounding to me. Soon after I learnt of her condition, I began receiving weird emails and phone calls. I began receiving phone calls from random individuals, wanting me to perform a variety of intimate tasks for them. Obviously, I was horrified, and immediately changed my phone number. I told my fiancé what had happened, and he believes that someone is mistakenly handing out my phone number to men they meet. I didn't believe it, so I ran a Google search for my phone number and discovered a couple Craigslist advertisements about me. The descriptions are simply too identical to my appearance. They've even mentioned my red hair. I honestly believe this is my future mother-in-law doing this. She understands how to post on Craigslist because she sells a lot of her items online. I've also been inexplicably signed up for a number of various dating and corner websites. If this is the future mother-in-law, I'm not sure when she'll stop. This is a low point, and I can't believe how sad this woman is. I showed everything to my fiancé and told him about my suspicions. He doesn't think his mother is tech-savvy enough to pull this off. Then what he said next shocked me to the bone, since I assumed his older sister liked me. He stated that his older sister had underlined the need to preserve a healthy connection. You should check your partner's phone every day. She went on to say, there should be no secrets, and I shouldn't have any problem showing him my phone when he gets home. I was planning to ask his sisters to join in my bridal party, and now I'm not sure where I stand with them. Do they dislike me as well? What the heck did I do to deserve this? Update 2. Following what transpired, my fiancé lost contact with his mother. This lasted about a week before she showed up knocking on our door. My fiancé was at work, so I was alone at home at the time. She was screaming that she was sorry and only wanted to meet me to apologize. Because my neighbors are starting to notice this sight, I invited her inside to discuss. She initially apologized profusely and stated that all she wanted was a fresh start. She was quite convincing, and I was debating just letting it all go. When she spotted my Christmas tree, all hell broke out yet again. She started screaming that I was a heretic who was now permitted to enjoy Christmas, since only Christians could. I politely requested her to leave and made it clear that she was not wanted here. But she refused. She assured me that no son of hers would ever celebrate Christmas with a heretic and dashed towards the tree. She began taking off and flinging each ornament, leaving them broken on the floor. I have several childhood and family decorations on my tree that I cherish. Several were smashed during her frenzy. I needed to grab her and physically drag her away. She ended up pursuing me numerous times and biting my hand. I finally managed to toss her out the front door and grab my phone to contact the cops. She screamed like a banshee out front, calling me every name in the book. When the cops arrived, she abruptly halted her fit and proceeded to play the victim. She reported to the police that I was an intruder in her son's flat and had attacked her. The police arrived with an ambulance, which was quickly hauled away because she was feeling faint and in anxiety. The police then arrived to question me, and I explained what had transpired. I showed them the bite mark on my hand and the bruises that were starting to appear. My fiancé arrived on the scene and promptly joined my side. He told the authorities that I do reside there and that his mother is a nutcase. When she saw her kid fighting with me, she threw another tantrum. The police inquired if I wanted to file charges against my future mother-in-law. I looked at my fiancé and could tell he was torn about what to do. I had to do what made me feel comfortable in the end, so I chose to file charges. Future mother-in-law was first transported to the hospital, then jailed after being released. She is now facing accusations of assault, and I have obtained a restraining order against her. This has really strained my relationship with my fiancé. He and the rest of his family want me to dismiss the allegations against his mother. He assures me that because I have a restraining order, she can no longer come near me, therefore I don't have to fear. I don't think he realizes how terrible this event was for me. He assures me that the final decision is up to me, and he will stand beside me. But he does not want his mother to go to prison. Update 3. When I returned home that day after being abused by my mother-in-law, my mother was outraged. I had a black eye and bruises. I declined the ambulance and went directly to my parents. My mother escorted me to my bed and prepared a cup of tea. Then she continued asking, who did this? She thought it was my ex. But when I told her the reality, she became even angrier. I told her everything that had happened, including all of the facts. She calmed me down and left to prepare some dinner. But she did leave the house. A few hours later, she returned. She had what she referred to as her prize, which was a large clump of my future mother-in-law's hair. She actually stored it in a memory box. After that, I received a call from my ex, who basically shouted at me. Mom took the call and instructed him not to contact me again, or he would be treated the same way I was. He hasn't contacted me since. Edit. I left my fiancé after everything transpired, and I was sad. I learned the news a few days after leaving and residing with my parents. I'm pregnant. I went to his flat to bring him the news, and his mother was present, so he opted to side with her. She shrieked the loudest banshee scream I'd ever heard. She informed me that I needed to obtain a termination immediately. I assured her I wouldn't do that. She lunged at me, but I made it out of the home. I do not know what to do. Story 2. I shot my stalker tonight. Reddit story in real life. Has anyone had success with private investigators? For the past 6 months, I have been persistently stalked. I had threats made on my life by someone I dated for a month. It started with 45 to 50 phone calls each day, 50-page text messages, and him showing up outside my house at 5 a.m. When I refused to comply or feed the negative attention, I began receiving threats, including allegations that he would murder me and get away with it. All he had to do was quit the country, informing me that he didn't need to push me to remain his buddy or give him another chance or else. Every time I banned his phone number from reaching me, he would call me from new ones, pretending to be other people, his buddies, or even random strangers he'd ask on the street. I once terrified an unsuspecting guy half to death by informing him that the person who had just told him to call me was stalking me, and I emailed him proof. He eventually called the cops on him. He escaped, of course. After almost 2 months, I was expelled from my apartment complex because my neighbors felt unsafe owing to his looming presence. I then applied for and received a TPO. A few days later, I received a picture message of the note the sheriff civil had left on the door of my stalker's then residence, with a message taunting me that, ... what you were trying to do was stupid, and a restraining order is just a piece of paper as a result. He simply avoided the process server, and I was not protected at all. I migrated on May 31st. This year. This didn't stop my stalker. He pledged to find wherever I moved and threatened that if he couldn't find me, he'd find my family, before sending me a map of my mother's house, whom he had never met. I received a message from a woman claiming to be my previous landlord, informing me that I had a balance on my account, and that in order to prevent late fees, I needed to pay the amount via the link supplied in the message. It turned out to be my stalker pretending to be a woman, and the link was a tool designed to capture the user's IP address when they clicked it. Following this discovery, I changed my phone number and began meticulously dismantling any traces of my previous online presence. This action only seemed to enrage him, so before deleting the profiles, I would try to prevent him from reaching me. Every time I blocked one, he just created a new one and continued to contact me as if nothing had occurred. 12 separate Reddit accounts, 9 different Tumblrs, 10 different Instagrams, 3 Meetup accounts, and 4 Facebooks. With that, he altered his location to my hometown and proceeded to add practically everyone from my high school graduating class, as well as 3 Duolingo and MySpace accounts. Yes, MySpace. I then received an empty parcel from him delivered to my former address with the declaration and address correction request. Please do not forward. I assume he expected the post office to comply with his requests and return the item to him with my new updated address on it. In mid-July, he made a profile with my images and likeness to threaten my family. When I didn't answer, he started posting semi-naked images of me on my page in an attempt to coerce me into communicating with him. I didn't, so I contacted Twitter to complain the account and get it removed, which they ultimately did. On August 21, 2014, about 8 p.m., I awoke to a loud knocking and ringing of my doorbell. I looked out my window to see who was there, and I was scared to see my stalker. I phoned the cops, and of course he disappeared once more, with 7 distinct police complaints filed. My stalker threatened to taser and rape me in the ass, using my boyfriend's blood as lubricant, if I didn't see him in person. This following Sunday night, at 6:45 a.m., I awoke to the same ringing and thumping. I then recorded him on video while I was on the phone with the cops. He left on foot again, and I received the same treatment from local enforcement. We can't do anything because technically he isn't doing anything wrong. Then why is he fleeing, I wonder? I acquired a TPO again, but I have no concrete address for this hazardous person, which is why I am in desperate need of a private investigator to assist in locating said residence so that this person can be served. I hope you can refer me to someone who can help me. I've had insomnia, melancholy, anxiety, and paranoia. I am absolutely isolated. I am 22 years old and have no social life anymore. I have no friends. I'm a shell of my previous self. I faced eviction and lost a job as a result of this man's behavior, and I'm not sure how much longer I can survive. There's a lot more filler shit that he's done to terrorize me, but I tried to simplify it for the sake of this already long essay. I have proof in the form of recordings, event diaries, and copies of all of his threats, interactions, and attempts to communicate, and I would be happy to email them to prove I am not lying. I am an LV if that helps at all. TLDR, the word stalking is so overused these days that no one takes it seriously. When someone stops liking someone, they call them a stalker. This does not entail looking at your ex's new lover's timeline for any longer than is healthy. This is the actual thing with being terrified to sleep at night. I've had this fear before, that it's eating away at me. I really need help. Edit, whoever plated me with gold, amazing. Thank you so much, as sad as it may appear. Redditors and Imgurians have been one of my only sources of comfort and human interaction during the last few months. You have no idea how much these communities have helped with my ongoing sadness. I see you are. Aw, WW, guys really rock. Thank you for being here for me. Update. I'm writing this while staring at the mess the cops left for me in a fog. After 6 months of stalking and threats to my life, my stalker snapped and decided to kick in my door and fulfill his vow. The past month has been filled with worry. I'd started sleeping with a chair put against my front door to buy me a few extra seconds in case of an emergency. I cringed to think how different things could have turned out if I hadn't barricaded the door. I awoke about 1:15 a.m. After one kick, the door gave way, followed by the noises of my stalker straining to dislodge the chair and force his way inside. I sprang up and grabbed the rifle that I'd learnt to use for everything, including showering. I stood at the top of my stairs, firing twice. I hear his rage, his amazement that I had spoken up for myself, go from 0 to 100 in moments. I've never been so terrified in my life. I'm not sure if he's still alive, but I know the cops have him, which is the most helpful. After months of his eluding the police, I began to wonder if he was unstoppable, untraceable. Houdini would kill me and get away with it. I'm currently in a blur of remorse, astonishment, relief, and amazement. I shuddered as the dogs dragged him out of his hiding place beneath a bush. I survived, although so many others did not. Holy AITA, I survived. Edit. The outpouring of support is overwhelming. I cannot thank you all enough. Everyone can be a critic, and the reality remains. You don't know what you're going to do until the circumstances presented to you. Those who believe there are other things to be done have never had someone tell them they don't deserve to breathe. And for those who believe a warning shot should have been fired, there are none. A gun is a dangerous weapon. You merely pull the trigger. If you are afraid for your life and have exhausted all other options for deterrence. When he kicked my door in, there was no longer any deterrent to harm. Warning shots are risky and may injure the unintended. This is not a Wild West film. That's what proper gun ownership entails. I promise that I'll update when things quiet down a bit. I will respond to everyone. And after being isolated for so long, I am always open to making new acquaintances,